We'll get started. A couple of facts about South Carolina. I think the main thing to know is 19% of our state's in the special flood hazard area. If you include, just doing the 1%, if you include the 0.2%, it's 21% of our state. So it's really important that our communities be aware of what's going on, how you handle a flood. And we had not flooded since 2004. So 2015 happened, and it was a shock to most of our communities. So this is what happened. Most people say, oh, y'all got hit by Joaquin. No, we would have been better off probably had we been hit by Joaquin. We actually had Joaquin in a stalled frontal boundary that created what we affectionately call a fire hose, and it dumped water and more water and more water. For 3 days it rained. We were expecting the ark to come by at any moment in South Carolina. We were holding our own. We were flooding. We were doing pretty good. Swiftwater Rescue was handling it until the dam started breaching on a Sunday morning. And I got a funny phone call where they were like, we need you at the EOC right now. And I'm like, you just shut every road down between my house and the EOC. So I'm not sure how I'm supposed to get there. I drive a Mini Cooper, it doesn't float. Unless you're sending the National Guard, I'll see you guys tomorrow. So they relented that I couldn't physically get there. So the result was extensive flooding across the state. The major impacts probably were in the Midlands area and along the Black River. So this is the canal in Columbia. It resulted in our most famous damaged structure ever, Tidal Max. This thing has been played on the news, I don't know how many times. It just came down a couple of weeks ago. Steve has a quick program, ours not so much, on HMGP sometimes. But no, that one took a while. It resulted in heavily damaged properties. Might be hard for y'all to see, but that is a TV. Everybody wants to mount their TV over their fireplace. This is a prime example why not to do that, because it will be sucked out of your home in a flood. We had cars piled on top of each other. We had homes undermined. Nothing like a good day when the garage gets sucked off your house. So this is what we were faced with. So what happened? We're talking substantial damage. We had already sent out before, like historic flooding coming, historic rainfall, get prepared, remember substantial damage. Yeah. We have a high cumulative participation as well in South Carolina. Probably 95% of our communities have a cumulative substantial damage, substantial improvement clause in their ordinance. This is what they looked like when we started talking. Thank you, Al Goodman, if you are still here. This is one from him. They looked at us like this and they're like, substantial what? So we knew we were in trouble. We're a mighty group of 4 when we're fully staffed, and so we knew that wasn't enough. And that includes an admin in that 4. Your admin loves you as a boss when you drag them out into the field. So we were able to provide training on substantial damage assessments, the requirements, enforcement, anything like that, and the software, but we needed help. So here's a huge shout out to Mississippi. I called Stacy Ricks and I'm like, so Stacy, how much do you want to come visit the state of South Carolina? And they came full force for us. They were there for 6 weeks. They were rotating staff in and out of South Carolina, and they stayed. And this became paramount for us. They made our staff bigger. We could get to more places. We could do more with that EMAC. And then, of course, we requested a HMTAP. So we went through that process. So at DNR's request, FEMA filled that pretty quickly, actually. So what we learned, communities wanted to be more involved. They absolutely, positively hated the HMTAP. And so they didn't like the timeline for conducting and delivery of the assessments. The lack of their control over what was going on created a lot of frustration. There were some inconsistencies in the assessments. And then, of course, because the community wasn't involved, they didn't understand the process. They didn't learn how to do a substantial damage assessment. And it made it where they didn't trust the results, and it ultimately made it where they pretty much didn't use it. It became an expensive document that wasn't used. Because we flooded in October. We were delivering the data from the HMTAP in December. That's too long. So 2016 came, and here we go again. And I remember Bill Neckerman sent me an email. He goes, Maria, this really isn't fair. Statistically, this should not be happening to you. Meanwhile, I'm in my second year as vice chair of ASFPM. So I'm like, great, here we go again. So here comes Hurricane Matthew. We're better prepared this time in my office, and we're calling everybody, and we're going, all right, guys, here we go again. So as you can see, a portion of the state takes an astronomical amount of water. North Carolina doesn't keep their own water and sends it through us. And we resulted, and again, we flooded. We flooded in an area of the state that low to moderate income is calling it is much nicer than what it is. It's a very depressed area of the state, and they took a huge hit. The other thing that was interesting is these are the areas where the floodplains are really wide, and when you get up in a helicopter or a plane and you see that the water goes forever, it's a concept most can't understand. The other thing is the water rises really slow and goes down really slow, and this is the first instance where we deal with the town of Nichols. And Nichols sits at the confluence of the Little PD and the Lumber River, and it flooded. So communities said, we don't want a HEMTAP. And I said, okay, so that means you're coming with us. And we did have a few communities that were hit in 2015 that were very kind and went with us to assist some communities. We literally dragged some people out into the field. They're like, we got to do what? They weren't hit in 2015. So we drug them out. They, I'm sure, enjoyed their time in the field. So the lessons we learned were many communities do have the capacity. They have enough staff and the willingness to do their own assessments. It is a heavy lift for communities that do not have staff. We have a community that is a staff of one, and they have 1,600 structures in the floodplain through there, and it's a county. So they're spread out. It's a heavy lift for them. And we had limited follow-up, partially because we flooded 2 years in a row. So that was just something we learned, and it was a very powerful lesson that was an issue. So here we go again in 2017. Irma decides to come and visit, but Irma doesn't make a direct landfall in South Carolina, so most people are like, great, Florida's getting hammered, and we're gonna survive this one. Well, no such luck. This came in at high tide for us. When the water starts to push in, it's pushing in at high tide, and our coast gets heavily flooded and causes extensive flooding. However, we were told when we called around, we did our same process, we're calling around, who needs help? We're sending emails, and everybody says, we've got this. So we decided this would be a good time for us to do site visits. And in doing site visits, this is what we find. Homeowners happen to be home, or well, home is a relative term, happen to be visiting their heavily damaged homes. And we asked them, like, wow, is this Irma damage? And they go, no, this is Matthew. We knew nothing about this. So this is when we learned, well, some communities may not have been fully honest about the type of damage had occurred. They may not have told us the whole truth. And we still had communities that actually did the right thing. They were out there, they were doing their assessments, but it made a need for more long-term assistance. Then 2018 comes, and we're like, really? Again? We're gonna do this again? So here we go, and we call this the grandma storm because Florence came through at 4 freaking miles an hour. We could have walked faster than this storm went through North Carolina and South Carolina. Starts out going into North Carolina. Look at North Carolina. They're going, haha, South Carolina, you're getting all our water. So here we go again. And unfortunately, the exact same area got hit again. That got hit in 16. So here we go again. This is Fort Gretsch. It's obliterated again, 10 feet of water in people's houses. We had homes that went completely under. We had some that did not. But we had extensive flooding again in the exact same areas. And guess what? Nichols flooded again. So we go back. So this is the time where in 2015, it took us a week to get out into the field. In 2016, it took us 1 day. In 2017, Nobody wanted our help, so we went and rode around for a week and saw all the damage. And then in 2018, the water was still coming out of North Carolina, so it was about a week before anybody was ready for us, but we hit the ground running pretty quickly. And the thing we did differently in 2018 was we tried to coordinate more volunteers and coordinate the locations. So that's what we were doing along with being out in the field. So we used volunteers from the DNR staff. They love it when we come knocking on their door now. Don't you want to do substantial damage assessment with us again? So the staff is out there along with additional staff from DNR. Non-hit communities stepped up again and volunteered to come help. And then we used the FEMA Corps. We took them out. Some of them from certain parts of the country were like, what's a mobile home? What's a slab on grade? So we had a little curve there with teaching them. And then we used the state guard. We actually have a state guard, so they were kind enough to assist us. Some things we learned. Management of locations and communities was challenging. When myself and Jessica are out in the field and you're trying to conduct assessments and figure out where you're going the next day, that's really hard. So that's one of our challenges, the collection of the data and then processing the data. You're collecting data, then you're going back in and using the software. That's difficult. Managing volunteers, they're rotating in and out on you constantly. So consistency could be an issue. And then back-to-back disasters causes huge issues regarding substantial damage and enforcement. We had some pretty big problems with, when we came back, we're like, so what'd you do with the stuff we did in 2016? And they're like, we were supposed to do something with that. So we knew we had a problem. So what were our outcomes? So speed is paramount. You have to get out there, whether you're the community or the state. The state should be out there helping communities and making sure they're doing things, so ensuring they're actually doing it, and communities need to hit the ground running. If you're waiting 6 months, it is too late. People have rebuilt and it is over. You are now in a huge compliance problem versus a substantial damage problem. So you think your life's tough at determining substantial damage, try determining them substantially damaged and then telling them they've got to, yeah, all that work you did, now you got to elevate your house or you got to tear it down or whatever it might be. We have developed a substantial damage training program. We have a pretty extensive training program now that we offer many, many times during the year. We participated in long-term substantial damage assistance this time that FEMA's coming up with. We have some suggestions for improvement just because we piloted it, but it did make a difference. The communities realize they're going to have to do something with all of that data. We are now creating a substantial damage volunteer network. Hopefully we'll get it done before we get hit again, because I hold out no hope that 2019 won't be the same as the past 4 years. And so hopefully we'll be able to get that volunteer network up and running. And we're pursuing a data collection tool to be able to make the field work easier, because the faster you go, the faster all of this gets over with. So, spending many, many years in the field, you have a few things that happen that you never thought you would hear, see, or say after a flood. So we're gonna have a little fun. Never thought I'd see a fish stuck to the side of a house. While he's not a large fish, he did not deserve to go down like this. A cowhide toilet seat cover. Never thought I'd hear my partner, my SD partner, say, I just want some civilized food. And when I asked her what was civilized food, she responded with McDonald's. I thought this was a really good thing considering we were in Marion County and it was so heavily hit. I was like, we're not getting you a steak by any means. So she just wanted some McDonald's fries. I think she wanted something warm more than anything else. Not that it isn't 800 degrees after a flood in South Carolina, so, but I think she just wanted some warm food. Doing assessments and asking, do you live here? And being asked, y'all ask way too many questions. And like, really? Ironically, that was a sheriff's deputy that answered that way. Now, I happen to be in the Department of Natural Resources. What's in the Department of Natural Resources in South Carolina but game wardens? So the game wardens love us. They go out with us. They help us with our mapping meetings. They do all kinds of work with us. So we had a little bit of an alligator issue after this flood. We'd had one in a coal ash pond, and we'd had one in a dog park. So with the dog park incident, we asked, we're like, okay, so we're headed to the city of Conway, and I've got a staff member that's terrified of alligators. And they actually responded with, don't worry, Maria, we can send in an alligator strike team. And I thought, how many alligators are in Conway? So that was one of our most epic things. Now, this is supposed to be me. This is now on a mug in my office. But when you show up in a town, and maybe some individuals that should know better tell you, it was really hot the other day and we were patrolling in the boat and we stuck our head in the water. And my response was, don't stick your head in the poop water. So everybody that was there with us was like, you've got to be kidding me. They stuck their head in the poop water. I also asked them how old were they? Were they 12? Only the best and brightest are hired by DNR law enforcement. So I was like, can you have a Yeti cooler on your boat? Can you just stick your head in the cooler? Needless to say, this will probably be on my retirement plaque from DNR. Don't stick your head in the poop water. So thank you for letting me speak today. And with that, I am done.